Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of human beings. To be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
America will wrap everyone who's grieving with our prayers and our love. But as I said just a few months ago, and I said a few months before that, and I said each time we see one of these mass shootings, our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It's not enough. It does not capture the heartache and grief and anger that we should feel. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America. Next week, or a couple of months from now. But we are not the only country on earth that has people with mental illnesses or want to do harm to other people. We are the only advanced country on earth that sees these kinds of mass shootings every few months. And earlier this year, I answered a question in an interview by saying, the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws, even in the face of repeated mass killings. And later that day, there was a mass shooting at a movie theater in Lafayette, Louisiana. That day, somehow this has become routine. The reporting is routine. My response here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this. We've talked about this after Columbine and Blacksburg, after Tucson, after Newtown, after Aurora, after Charleston. It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun. And what's become routine, of course, is the response of those who oppose any kind of common sense gun legislation. Right now, I can imagine the press releases being cranked out. We need more guns, they'll argue. Fewer gun safety laws. Does anybody really believe that?
The sad news is I think people actually sincerely believe that somehow more guns, when there is roughly one gun to every American, man, woman, and child, there's one gun in the United States for every American. Yet and still, people believe that the answer to the problem is that we have more guns. The other position that is always taken on days like this is the fact that we don't need to politicize it, or that it's too early or it's too soon, and that we need to give the families time to grieve. And I was reading an article by Vox. They were actually quoting an article from the Washington Post. And the problem with the idea of waiting to talk about this conversation is that there have been actually more killings than there have been days in 2015. There have been 238 days in 2015, 239 if you count today. And so far, there have been 247 mass shootings. Mass shootings are defined specifically as 4 plus killings. 4 people, a minimum of 4 people killed. So there have been 247 mass shootings in the United States so far this year, and there have only been 239 days in the year so far. So if we're going to wait until a time where people have had a time to heal and to mourn, the problem is that there will never be a day, because people are getting killed every single day. So when will be the appropriate time to have this conversation? When will be the appropriate time to discuss it if we have to wait until there's no more grieving, or that the families have, buried their dead, when people are getting killed every day? And this is just mass murders. Just this month, actually, I'm sorry, last month, this is already October. Last month at the university that I attended, Bethune-Cookman University, there was a double murder. And then later the gentleman killed himself in prison. That didn't even count as a mass murder because it was only 2 people. We're talking about 4 plus, for a minimum of 4 people being killed 294 times so far in the United States. So when will be the time that we can legitimately talk about this, if we are to wait until there's the better time to not politicize this? That's a cop-out. That's an excuse. That's a constant excuse that is used by people who are afraid that someone is coming after their guns. And then they present this false dichotomy of, it's either you're attacking the Second Amendment, or you have to leave it completely alone, or you can't, let me phrase that better. It's a false dichotomy between protecting the Second Amendment or enacting anything that would be a common sense policy. Those are the only choices that exist in the minds of some people, that we can't even have a conversation. There's not a piece of legislation that could even be debated in Congress. Anyone who mentions gun control at all is automatically attacking the Second Amendment, their Second Amendment right to own a gun, which is clearly not the case. Which is clearly not, we don't live in in a world of absolutes where you either have to let us own every gun imaginable, or you're trying to assault our Second Amendment rights. Is that the extremes that these people live in? Does this actually make sense? Do you feel like if we ban certain assault rifles, certain types of machine guns, if we do universal background checks, then we're attacking your Second Amendment right, when you still have the right to own all sorts of weaponry? This is the illogical. This is the disingenuous. This is the disingenuous debate that is not even a debate. It's the disingenuous cop-out that is forwarded by the NRA every single time something like this happens. And the sad news about it is that if we didn't do anything after Sandy Hook, we're not going to do anything now. If no one batted an eye when a gunman who fit the same profile, and we'll discuss this shooter's profile shortly, but a gunman who fit the same profile went into an elementary school, killed 20 children, along with 6 adults, teachers, and volunteers, and then killed himself. If America did not bat an eye after that, then do we ever stand any chance of actually having enough compassion to do something about it? And President Obama is right. Prayer is not enough. Keep your prayers. Keep your prayers if you're not going to move into action. Your prayers are meaningless if you don't put action behind it. And that's not just me talking. If you want to speak religiously and religious jargon, that's scriptural. Faith without works is dead. So praying and you're not doing anything about it is just as useless as you not praying. You may as well not pray. Save your prayers. And here we are, another, I actually, because I work so late and I get off so late, I sometimes have to get a nap in the middle of the day. I went to sleep, and 45 minutes later, when I woke up, 10 people were dead. 13 people now were dead. Just that quickly. And it's that easy to do. And it's that easy to accomplish because it is that easy to get a gun in so many states. And there's a lot of misinformation out there in terms of states with strong gun policies. gun control laws. And I want to go over some of that data here also. One thing President Obama did was challenge the media to put out their own data, because, no one's going to believe it if it comes from President Obama. President Obama could say the sky is blue, right? He'll say the sky is blue and people will say, to hell with that, the sky is green. President Obama is trying to run a left-wing conspiracy socialist takeover to convince us that the sky is blue. So he challenged the media to put out their own data. And no sooner than he said it, Vox put out this, and he wanted you to compare. He wanted you to see side by side how many people have died each year from gun violence compared to how many people have died each year from terrorist attacks. Vox did a good job of going all the way back to 2001 to include September 11th. And so we see a peak in 2001 of about 3,000 people who were killed from a terrorist attack. That same year, over 11,000 people were killed due to weapon violence, to gun violence. And then you see a dramatic decline where it drops completely off to almost nothing. Yes, there were killings in the Boston bombing. People were killed. Yes, there were different terrorist attacks across the years. But when you compare it to the number of people that are killed from gun violence, from gun homicides, it doesn't even register on the scale. And this includes mass violence. This includes mass shootings. This includes the archetype type of shooting, school campus shooting by a deranged white guy who's disenfranchised, who's mad at the world. It includes that. It also includes gun violence in Chicago. It also includes gun violence in every other city. But the core of the problem is how easily accessible weapons are. And how easy, even in states like Chicago, in cities like Chicago, where they do have strong weapons bans, there's still access to weapons from other states. The number of guns that are confiscated in Chicago that are coming from out of state is ridiculous. So it's still about being able to access guns and to use it to commit violence. But comparing what President Obama said, he said, don't take my word for it. I want you to see it for yourself. Looking at the data, you see that there is no comparison. And at this point, I tweeted out last night, at this point, it is more logical for us to be afraid of people with a name like Chris or Richard or Robert than it is Ahmed or Muhammad. Logically, based on the data, looking at this screen, you see the disparity between the number of gun violence deaths and terrorist attacks and deaths from terrorist attacks in the United States. But yet and still, I still hold the position that if we did not do anything after Sandy Hook Elementary, after all 20 children were killed, I just don't imagine that people are going to give much of a damn right now. These were adults. Most of them were in their 20s that were killed yesterday. So do you think the NRA is going to bat an eye? Do you think? No, a matter of fact, not only did the NRA not bat an eye, but Fox News doesn't bat an eye, because it's all about these false dichotomies and these extremes of, if you want to do anything whatsoever to prevent gun violence, then you're trying to attack our rights to own a weapon. Don't take my word for it. Here's Bill O'Reilly on his Fox News show last night.
Guns are legal in America under the Second Amendment. Tonight, President Obama delivered an impassioned anti-gun speech, which we'll discuss later. But the mass murder today could not have been prevented by any legislation, in my opinion. There's no rational explanation for all the carnage, none. And no public policy will stop it.
Really? There's no explanation and no policy can stop it? There's nothing we can do. So Bill O'Reilly, and this is the fatalistic position that so many people take, not because they genuinely believe this, but because they want to avoid having a conversation about gun control at all costs. And you know what? It's not about safety and protection. It's simply about ideology. It's simply about the fact that the gun ideology, the ideology of weaponry, aligns so perfectly with right-wing conservatism. The NRA is a lobbying activist arm of the Republican Party that, above anything else, wants to stop any legislation that would prevent these types of killings. or that would make them more difficult. We're not under any disillusion. We're not fooled by the idea that we can control and stop violence. But can we not make it more difficult for people like Chris Harper Mercer, the shooter on yesterday, to get their hands on weapons and then at the drop of a dime be able to just go and kill as many people as they want to? Australia did something about it. I'm looking for this particular article. Australia in 1996 had a mass shooting, and they enacted policies. They enacted legislation to prevent this from happening. Oh, perfect. I found it. Programs that limit access to guns have decreased. And this is actually not only in gun homicides, but gun suicides. And in Australia, they saw a decrease in gun homicides and gun suicides after the 1996 incident in Australia. They enacted policies. They got into action. They moved. They did something. They didn't just sit back with this disingenuous, fatalistic perspective, because they don't really, Bill O'Reilly doesn't really believe that there's nothing that could be done. They just don't want to do anything that involves regulating weapons. You have to have a license to drive a gun in this state, in this country, in every state of this country. There are some states that you don't have to have a license to get a weapon, or that it's so much more easier to get a license for a gun than it is to get a license to drive a car. This is the false dichotomy that we live in. And you know what? I don't even know if it's worth talking about. Is it even worth talking about when you consider the fact that we're most likely not going to do anything about it whatsoever? Because the thing that is most treasured and the most valued in this country isn't the Second Amendment. It's weapons, it's guns. Because no one is attacking your Second Amendment. No one is going to come and confiscate your guns so that you can't fight back against a tyrannical takeover. I want to know how many government takeovers have been prevented in since 2001 compared to how many people have been killed by gun violence since 2001. There's no justifiable explanation. There's no excuse. There's no rationale. It is irrational. But the amazing thing about it is that we will do nothing about it whatsoever. And so, like President Obama said, it's very likely that before the end of this show, there'll be another mass shooting. Just based on the numbers, there is a mass shooting every day, more than one every day in the United States of America. All right, when we come back, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to discuss another very disturbing aspect of this, which is the shooter himself posted online his plans to carry out this mass shooting, and he was actually encouraged by some people online. I have screenshots and I have links to share with you about all this that is happening. So folks, stay tuned. It's Friday, but we have some stuff to deal with. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, and we'll be back after this break. What's going on, everyone? This is Benjamin Dixon, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you how you can support the Benjamin Dixon Show. One thing I've learned over the last few months is that it is impossible for us to do this without you. Every time you click on a link, every time you read an article, every time you share a podcast or share a YouTube video, you are absolutely supporting our show. And without you, it's simply impossible. But there's another way you can support us. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com and register for our blog. You will be directly contributing to the success of the Benjamin Dixon Show by registering for our blog. You will help us increase our audience and increase our reach. Remember, every click counts, every subscribe counts, and every share counts. So go over to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com, click on the Contact Us tab, and register for our blog today. There is a radical, violent revolution taking place in America right now. Figuratively speaking, where we are ripping from the status quo the very notion that they have the right to define the status quo. We are ripping it from them. We are telling them that they no longer get to decide what America is going to look like. And that is terrifying for a lot of people. That is downright terrifying when someone comes into your home only to help you to understand that your home is not yours in isolation, that we share this home equally, and that we have the right to be comfortable in this home just as much right as you have to be comfortable, so that a white Christian straight man, the comfort that he feels in America will be experienced by the gay Black woman and every other intersection that has been erased. That, my friends, that is a revolution if I have ever seen one. That is something, that is the next stage of evolution in America.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Ben Dixon. He's obviously he's a radio show host or something like that.
You're damn right I am. Hey, welcome back. So the Daily Beast has released a profile of the gunman, Chris Harper Mercer, and you can see click on the link in the description. It would take you to it. His MySpace account, belonging to Christopher Harper Mercer, actually it was his dating profile. That's what I'm looking for. His dating profile identified him as a conservative Republican and list one of his dislikes as religion. He is half Black, half white. His father is white. His mother is African-American. And some of the things that he shares on his MySpace profile is his love for the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. He has quite a bit of propaganda against religion. There are reports that he asked people to identify their religion. That I saw the New York Times report that he asked people to stand up and tell him their religion before he killed them. But the New York Times retracted that article. The Daily Beast actually links there. And so I can't confirm that, only because the original reference to it by the New York Times was retracted as a hoax. So that's to be pinned. But there is a lot of his manifesto, essentially a collection of all of his things that he believed. He hated religion, all religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, every religion he had something against. There was something else very interesting in his profile. And it escapes me, but he was 26 years old, half Black, half white, conservative Republican, but hated religion. This guy actually crossed over a lot of intersections. He crossed over a lot of different demographics. And so this can't be laid at the feet of any particular group. And that's kind of how we play politics in America. We like to blame, once we get, oh, here's a Black guy, let's blame Black Lives Matter, or here's a white guy, let's blame right-wing propaganda. That's what we like to do in politics. I do it too. I'm not even going to lie about it, clearly. But this guy actually crossed every intersection. He was half Black. He was half white. He was a Republican conservative, but he was an atheist. He hated religion, so he didn't fit neatly into the conservative Republican paradigm. But the one thing is certain is his belief that he was disenfranchised, his belief that the world was against him, and no one was paying attention. And that's what it was. It came back to me. The thing that was most interesting is that he had previously discussed online the shooter, the online shooter, the live shooting in Virginia last month. He discussed and lauded the guy who did it, and kind of admired the fact that at the beginning of the day, no one knew his name. And by the end of the day, everyone around the world knew his name. So all this type of writing was taking place online. He was sharing this publicly for the world to see. And I'm just curious why out of all of the monitoring that takes place, out of all of the surveillance that takes place in the United States of America, because it still goes on, clearly it still goes on, right? Out of all the surveillance that goes on, no one had an algorithm to pick up domestic terrorists. Or is it because we don't want to consider this guy to be a domestic terrorist? We're just going to lump him into a mass murderer. And that way, this type of thing continues because we're not putting a laser-like focus onto guys like this who pose a far greater threat to our security than people with names like Ahmed. You know, and this is the other thing, like he posted his plans online last night, the night before the shooting. He posted his plans on 4chan. And it's not just that he posted his plans, he actually got encouragement. He got people who gave him advice on how to accomplish it. And I'm wondering, is no one paying attention? And I'm putting it on the screen here so you can see it for yourself. Is no one paying attention to what's happening in areas like this of the internet? Right? Like we're so concerned with Ahmed's clock, and we pay no attention to things that people are clearly posting online. And here he is. This has been identified, and I have links in the description. The post itself has been taken down by 4chan, but there was a cached image that I was able to get, and there was also an RSS feed version of this posted at the Free Republic. So this is confirmed, right? This was definitely posted on 4chan the night before, and people actually gave him advice on how to do it. And so the conversation goes, this is allegedly, this is the Chris Harper saying, some of you guys are all right. Do not go to school tomorrow if you're in the Northwest. And then you go down and you see other people who say, do it. You see people who are questioning whether Beta, which is what he's identified as, his name on 4chan was Beta. I guess as compared to alpha male, he was considered a beta male, whatever. But the last one at the bottom, you can see it on YouTube. You can see it from the anonymous person on 4chan said, I suggest you enter a classroom and tell people that you would take them as hostages, make everyone get into a corner and open fire. This was a conversation posted publicly. This was not a closed thread. This was not something that someone's search algorithms could not find. This was posted the night before. There were hours in between the time he posted this and the time he actually executed his plans, and no one could stop this. They wouldn't stop it. They couldn't stop it because they weren't looking. That's the only, had this been, and yes, I'm going to say this because it's absolutely true. Had this been someone named Ahmed posting this online, someone named Muhammad posting this online, the FBI, the Homeland Security, everybody, the CIA, who isn't even supposed to operate inside of the United States, everybody would have descended on that town in Oregon and arrested this guy before he could have even gotten finished typing enter, the return key, and posting this all the way. We put so much emphasis on this xenophobic fear of terrorism that, mind you, it does occur abroad. There is Islamic terrorism abroad, right? There is, but inside of the United States, statistically, there are far more killings from right-wing extremists than there are Islamic extremists. But because we won't allow ourselves to consider this to be domestic terrorism, because we don't want to sully that name. We don't want to water down that name, right? We don't want to call everyone a terrorist, but this is pure terrorism. But because we won't give it that label, we don't give it that amount of attention, and we don't give it that amount of focus, and stuff like this that is posted blatantly just goes right underneath the radar, and no one says anything And then of course, you know, there's all sorts of commentary that could be given about the culture and the environment of 4chan and sites like that encourage this. They encourage people, if someone's depressed and they mention that they want to commit suicide. According to my sources, I've never really even been on the site except to verify this thread. But according to people who have been on that site, they encourage suicides. Right? It is the cesspool of the internet. And wouldn't it just make sense if we're breaking civil liberties, right? If we're in the business in America of violating people's civil liberties, wouldn't it make sense that they would be monitoring this type of stuff? Right? If Obama is the communist dictator that you think he is, and you think he's coming after your guns and he's doing all this type of monitoring of taking over and martial law, don't you think they should at least be looking at this type of stuff? The only people we're concerned with in the United States, almost as a matter of policy, are potential Muslim, Arabic, Middle Eastern descent terrorists, but pay no attention to our own homegrown right-wing or left-wing terrorism. I don't know if there's anything else to be said about this. That's the whole story in the nutshell. And there's nothing that needs to be driven home more than the reality that it's just another day in the United States of America. And we're going to turn the page. We're going to call out the names of the people who were killed. We're going to put their picture on television. We're going to give their profiles. People are going to mourn. People are going to discuss it. People are going to say how tragic it was. People on the left are going to say we need more gun control. People on the right are going to say we need less gun control. We need people to carry guns in schools. We're going to have all of these ridiculous conversations that are ridiculous because we have them every single time this happens. And nothing changes. I was watching CNN yesterday, which is rare, right? I'm not a fan of CNN, but they had some pretty decent coverage. And one of the young men who actually got away was describing what he had to go through to get away. He left, he ducked, he dodged, he ran down by the lake and he hid down there for almost an hour until the coast was clear. And I think it was Jake Tapper or Wolf Blitzer, one of the two, asked him, were you prepared for anything like this? Now, in my mind, I thought he was going to say, how can you be prepared for anything like this? That's a ridiculous question. This is stupid. No one is prepared for anything like this. He didn't say that. He said, we've been preparing for something like this since middle school. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. That in America, children who go to school have to be prepared and have to do drills, not just for tornadoes, but for mass shootings, because it happens with that amount of frequency. That in my mind, I grew up in a time where mass shootings were like Columbine was right after high school for me. Like the year I graduated, I can't even remember. It's somewhere around the time I graduated. Prior to that, it had not been happening on a scale where we actually had to do exercises to prepare for a mass shooting. And here this guy said when he was in middle school, they started preparing for mass shootings. And these sons of bitches don't want to do anything to even alleviate the ease with which they can get access to guns to commit it. They would rather our children have to practice drills in school, get bulletproof backpacks that they're selling now, right? Get the cots that kids lay on, the little fold out cots. They're building those to be bulletproof now. They would rather a paradigm like that for fear of someone violating their Second Amendment Constitution rights, when that's clearly a false narrative and a false dichotomy simply propped up to end conversations before they even begin about how we can prevent this. Because 300 million guns in America isn't enough. I guess we need 600 million. We'll be back after this break. You can join the conversation, 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. So, somewhere in here, somehow I have to get this other news involved. So let me just do a hard shift. In Alabama, and actually, I can tie this back. Actually, I will tie this back. President Obama yesterday in his speech talked about the requirement that we have. If you believe that gun violence is a problem in the United States of America, then you should do something about it, and you should do something about it politically. He said, it is time. Let's politicize this. Let's stop beating around the bush. Let's politicize it. And if you believe something needs to be done, you need to vote. You need to vote to send representatives to the Congress and to send senators to the Senate that hold your values with regard to gun violence as well as everything else. Well, if you can't vote, then good luck with sending someone there to represent your interests. In Alabama, this is, I don't want to thank Michael Bowen for sending this over to me. In Alabama, where voter ID, a government issued ID, is required to vote. It's illegal to vote without a government ID. Alabama has now shut down the Department of Motor Vehicles in 29 counties. In 29 counties, you cannot get a license, which is by far the number one ID, government issued ID that Americans use. Not everyone has a passport. Not everyone has a general ID. And even the general IDs are issued by the DMV. But in Alabama, it's required that you have a government issue, a state government issued ID to vote. 29 counties have had their Department of Motor Vehicles shut down because of quote unquote budget constraints. Those 29 counties overwhelmingly represent the most impoverished and represent the African-American communities of Alabama. So Alabama state officials have essentially stripped away. Not only did wait. Let me back up. Not only did they make it more difficult to vote by putting the requirement of an ID to vote, which means it's probably harder to vote in Alabama than it is to get a gun. That already passed. That was already on the books. So that was behind them. And I guess people were like, you know what? We just have to live with it. Let's go spend money to get an ID so that we can vote. That wasn't enough. They have now gone and say, well, we can't afford Department of Motor Vehicles in DMVs in each of these counties because of budget constraints. And so let's gut all of these agencies in these 29 counties, which are overwhelmingly African-American counties. And African-Americans overwhelmingly vote Democratic. 90% in the last election voted Democratic. So much for people overcoming the hurdles to vote. You know, so much for, well, how hard is it to get a license? Well, now in Alabama, you have to drive to another county just to get a license. And if you look at the map, I didn't post the map. The map is in the link that I showed. But if you look at the map, some of these counties are far away from other counties that they can go to get a license. So not only is it a financial burden, but it is a time burden. They have to take time off from work. They have to come up with money and transportation. All of these hurdles simply to be able to vote. And we don't want to put background checks, universal background checks for people to get guns. I don't want to assume that these people have wet dreams of a draconian world, of an outlaw world where people are free to stand their ground and protect their castle and shoot people who they don't like. And people without guns and without resources are just at the mercy of how the people with guns feel that day. You know, it's like they want this world where justice is served at the end of a barrel. And it's easy to just stop the conversation there, but I'm really curious, what other explanation could there be? Like, what world do they really want when they make it so much more difficult to even vote? If you are African American, if you have a certain political persuasion, because people, young people, older people who well, not necessarily older people, so let me take them off the plate. Young people, people who are impoverished, African Americans overwhelmingly vote with progressive movements, with the Democratic Party. And now Alabama has gutted 29 counties where they could gutted the DMV. They can no longer get IDs in those counties. Am I drawing the wrong conclusion here? Am I being too hyperbolic to say that these people have an agenda that they clearly want to execute and don't want anyone who disagrees with them to be able to get in the way? And so they not only make it more difficult by requiring a state ID, a state issue ID, but now they rip away the opportunity to even get the state issue ID. And these are the same exact people, mind you, these are the same exact people who don't want any type of inconvenience, any type of stumbling block to be put in the way of you being able to get a gun. But you want to vote? Oh, hell no. If you want to vote, no. Let's put hurdle number 1. Let's put hurdle number 2. And then now that you overcome those hurdles, let's just say to hell with it. Let's not even give them the opportunity to meet the requirement to be able to vote. These are the same exact people. These are the same exact people, mind you, who are so fearful of their Second Amendment being violated, so terrified because, you know, if we do universal background checks, that is equivalent to us just ripping apart the Second Amendment, right? We're just throwing out the Second Amendment by requiring universal background checks. These are the same people who call themselves defending the Second Amendment and have no regard whatsoever to the Fourth Amendment. They have no regard whatsoever to the privacy of a woman to make a decision with her doctor. That was the basis on which Roe versus Wade was decided. The Fourth Amendment, the privacy, the right to privacy. That's why women have the right to abortion. But you know, God forbid we violate the Second Amendment, but to hell with the Fourth Amendment. You know, let's be pro-life. Let's be pro-life when it comes to children, to fetuses. Is that the correct plural? I don't know. Let's be pro-life with regard to a fetus, but let's just open up the floodgates for mass shootings and don't care. And all we're going to do is pray about it. Let me tell you, clearly, if you've listened to my show more than one day, you know my religion, you know my faith. I pray every single day, not out of ritual. I pray because I just, that's just what I do. Clearly, I believe in prayer, but clearly, I also know your prayers are not going to do anything if you don't get off your butt and make something happen. Why would you sit back and expect a God to come in and fix a problem that you can fix? You are clearly abdicating your responsibility to fix a problem because you don't want that problem fixed. When you say, let's pray about it, you're simply saying, let's not talk about it. When you're saying, let God fix it, you're saying, let's not fix the problem. Because whatever you believe, I don't care what God you believe in, or if you don't believe in a God, the reality of it is things that need to be accomplished here can be accomplished by us. The problem with gun violence does not have to be fixed by God. We don't have to wait on God to come down and change the hearts of all these twisted people. All we need to do at a bare minimum is to allow universal background checks so that we can weed out the crazies, so that we can weed out people who are mentally deranged or just criminally deranged, right? They don't even have to be crazy in terms of a psychosis. They could just be they could just have a desire to inflict pain. We don't need God to fix that. We can do more to weed that out. But that conversation, I guarantee you, before the end of the show, somebody's going to be in the comment section talking about, I want to assault your Second Amendment rights. I tell you what, if you're so concerned with the Second Amendment rights, then I want you to be equally as concerned with Fourth Amendment rights. I want you to be equally concerned with 13th Amendment rights. Don't cherry pick which constitutional amendment you want or constitutional right you want to defend and then throw the other ones out the window. If you're so concerned with the Second Amendment, then you better be concerned with the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment and the Fourth Amendment and every other amendment that actually goes counter to your conservative values, that gives liberties to people with whom you disagree. But again, I said this on a previous show. I think I'm going to end early. If you guys want to join the conversation, you can 857-600-0518, because I'm a little I think the correct version of the word I want right here is exasperated. I'm struggling between exasperated and exacerbated, but exasperated. I'm a little tired and weary of this particular conversation because we've had it so many times. And if your heart didn't break enough to want to change the world after Sandy Hook, then I guess you probably don't feel much of anything this morning. It's completely irrelevant and indifferent to you. So you don't get to hold the mantle of pro-life. You don't get to champion pro-life values when you won't do everything in your power to stop gun violence. Yeah, I'm stopping early. I want to share something. It's been a really rough Friday morning, and I want to share something that is something beautiful. I mean, I think after a day like today, it's only fitting. A day like yesterday, it's only fitting that we share something beautiful. There's a video. There's a viral video on Facebook and on YouTube of a couple that has been struggling to get pregnant and have a child for 17 years. They had multiple miscarriages, and they had a child be stillborn, died immediately after birth, or yeah, you understand what I'm trying to say. And so the wife was trying to lose weight. They had given up. They had completely given up on trying to have a child. The wife was starting to gain weight and she didn't understand why. She didn't imagine that she could be pregnant. So she was trying to lose weight. She went to the doctor to see why she couldn't lose weight. And the doctor revealed to her that she was 5 months pregnant, and she decided to surprise her husband with the news. So I want to play this for you, and let's end on a positive note. Let's do that. And those that are listening in, I have the link in the description and you can see that.
There's some stuff in the oven too.
What's the note? You pregnant? You pregnant?
Ain't I fat? That's why I couldn't lose weight.
You pregnant?
Guess how far along?
How long?
19 weeks, almost 5 months.
Come here.
Due February 16th.
Come here.
And it's a boy.
Whew. Let me do this right there. Let's clap. Let's do an applause there. So you saw the husband's reaction, or you heard the husband's reaction, and he's trying to tell her, he's like, come here, give me a hug. And she's like, no, I'm not done with the news. He said the baby is due in February, and guess what? It's a boy. And the dad, the husband, the dad, soon to be dad, broke down into tears, man. And somebody sent me this morning, and I'm sitting in the bed at 4:30 in the morning, like, you know, what's all this coming down my face? A beautiful thing. Let me tell you something. Let me close with this, and I'm out of here, and I'm going to have a great weekend. And I want you to have a great weekend. If you're going to pray about anything, don't pray about things that we can fix. Go out there and fix it. If you're going to pray about something, pray about situations that can't be fixed by us. We can't fix this. They're expecting a baby in February. Use your prayers for that. But use your action to fix the problems of gun violence in the United States of America. I'm out of here. You guys have a great weekend.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.